Gundam has been building a multiverse for nearly 50 years, each with their own shows, movies, and manga, all putting their own spin on the legacy. In this video, we're breaking down every single one, what makes each universe special, and the stories you need to know about. The original, the Universal Century. It would be criminal if we didn't start with the universe that Gundam was born in. Obviously debuting with the original show, the Universal Century, or UC for short, is home to the most stories of any Gundam universe. The 1-Year War, its most famous conflict, saw the space colony-based Principality of Zeon start a war against the Earth Federation looking to conquer the planet. Outside of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, the conflict has several OVAs, video games, and manga purely centered on it. In fact, almost every continent on planet Earth has been featured as the setting for some sort of media that takes place during that same war. What is absolutely insane about this particular timeline is how many conflicts take place within it. Operation Stardust, the Grips War, the first Neo-Zeon War, the second Neo-Zeon War, the Laplace Incident, and the Mofty Rebellion all take place within a 20-year time frame. Each conflict is actually tied back to the 1-Year War in some form or fashion, features characters from that conflict, and each of them has some very high quality anime tied to them. If you follow the story, you see Zeon's rise and fall as an antagonist, plus the ripples left from a very bloody, very personal set of wars. After the Zeon saga comes a point in time you could consider late UC, which began with the film Gundam F91. At this point, Gundam's creator, Yoshiyuki Tamino, wanted to start a new conflict with new players and new themes, and this particular story began the conflicts centered around the Crossbone Vanguard. Gundam F91 would be followed up by the very popular manga Gundam Crossbone, which featured the Vanguard becoming the heroes of the story as they battled the evil Jupiter Empire. The third major conflict of the timeline is featured in what might be the darkest story in the Universal Century, Victory Gundam. Created at a time when Tamino was both incredibly depressed and creatively frustrated, the dour tone was reflected in the conflict. The war featured is between a paramilitary organization called the Ligue Militaire and the Zanskar Empire, featuring fascistic, murderous villains and a very young Gundam pilot just trying to make sense of it all. The Zanskar conflict in this show put a very sobering tone to the final anime of the Universal Century. The universe also has a few notable spin-offs. The most recent was Gundam G-Quux, which presented a universe where Char Aznable acquired the Gundam, and how different the timeline would be had that one change been made. Another notable offshoot is Gundam Thunderbolt. This series follows elements of the original show, but has an even more grim tone and does not follow or mention the original cast. Instead, it follows the rivalry of the characters E.O. Fleming and Daryl Lorenz, and their battles in the Thunderbolt sector and beyond. There's also a comedy offshoot of this universe called Around 30-Something Office Worker Haman-sama. This version tells a comedic story following Zeta Gundam's femme fatale Haman Karn as she navigates Japan's corporate world instead of running the military. There's a few key elements that make the Universal Century as interesting as it is. The first is that many of the major stories within this universe are all written by Gundam's creator Yoshiyuki Tamino. The man is considered one of the most iconic creators in anime history, so if you want to find out how he gained that reputation, this universe will show you. The second element is how interconnected just about everything is. Even when you separate the sagas into the early and late UC, you're going to find yourself following characters throughout multiple stories, leading to a fun feeling of familiarity. The most notable element, however, is the tone. The Universal Century stories are largely focused on showing the folly of war and the cost that it incurs on human beings. Though Gundam is largely known for its really cool giant robots, the Universal Century isn't afraid to show you just how dark and brutal a war can be, and has some of the greatest war stories you're ever going to find in all of anime. To run down the most important shows, films, and manga, we have Mobile Suit Gundam, Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, Char's Counterattack, Unicorn Gundam, Gundam Hathaway, Gundam F91, Crossbone Gundam, and finally Gundam Victory. Operation Meteor, the After Colony timeline. If you had your childhood or teenage years watching Toonami around the turn of the millennium, this timeline was probably your first. The After Colony timeline features the very show that introduced Gundam to the West in Gundam Wing. To this day, it remains one of the most popular shows of this franchise outside of Japan. So what makes this timeline so different? The major element that changes things is that the war's dynamic is done in reverse. The formula of many Universal Century Gundam stories is that of an innocent teenager falling into the iconic giant robot. The enemy would usually be a foe from outer space that they would have to defeat. Gundam Wing features an enemy force that controls the Earth and oppresses the colonial citizens. In response, some independent groups within the colonies make the Gundams, and then train teenage assassins to wage a guerrilla war in these machines against the forces of Oz. The media that takes place within this universe focuses on a conflict that is called the Eve Wars, where many small conflicts lead to a larger one at the end of the year after Colony 195. Though there are a couple of stories that take place afterwards, they are still tied into that conflict and affected by it. The After Colony timeline includes Gundam Wing and its sequel film Endless Waltz. There's also a manga retelling and remixing of Wing called Glory of the Losers that features mecha designs by the legendary Hajime Katoki, who did the redesigns of Endless Waltz. This manga is largely the same story, but changes a few elements here and there. There's also a prequel manga called Episode 0, a side story called The Last Outpost, formerly known as G-Unit, which features a new cast of characters, and there's also 2 sequel stories. One just recently began as part of Gundam Wing's 30th anniversary, called 0.5.5 Preventer 7, which takes place after Endless Waltz. The final story in the timeline is called Frozen Teardrop, which was a series of novels taking place several decades after the original show. Retelling of a classic, Cosmic Era. The Cosmic Era gave us the hugely popular Gundam Seed. Debuting in the early 2000s, it was designed to feel familiar to longtime fans, while drawing in a new generation of viewers. One of its most recognizable traits is how closely it mirrors elements of the Universal Century, echoing its themes and structure while carving out its own identity. It also has some of the most unique mecha designs of any Gundam show. Its director, Mitsuo Fukuda, brought in inspiration from another show he worked on called Metal Armor Dragonar. Many mobile suits in Seed have similarities to the main robot of that show, like having what seems to be half of a jet on their backs. Though it takes inspiration from the original Mobile Suit Gundam, stories within the Cosmic Era don't have as many shades of gray as the Universal Century. Oftentimes, the lead cast that the story follows will be facing off against multiple factions led by tyrants, with our main characters feeling as if they are the only ones who are trying to push for peace. The Cosmic Era is home to the anime series of Gundam Seed and its sequel series, Seed Destiny, and then its sequel film, Seed Freedom. However, this universe also has several side stories. One of the more famous is known as Stargazer, an original net animation that centers around a Gundam being built for space exploration. Another popular element of this universe is the Seed Astray manga, which is an energetic side story with several unique Gundam designs and many colorful characters. Post-apocalyptic wasteland. After war. Similar to the Cosmic Era, Gundam X's after-war timeline shares certain similarities to the Universal Century. In this case, it specifically shares a one-year war-style conflict between space colonies and the Earth. It also shares new types as a concept as well. However, where things differ is how the wars ended. In the after-war timeline, the final battle of that major conflict ended with the colonial forces dropping dozens of colonies onto the Earth. The result was catastrophic, as much of the Earth's civilization was destroyed by the attack. Unlike some of these other universes, After War only has a very small amount of media tied to it. The major component is the television series Gundam X, which takes place after the war that was mentioned earlier. There is also a prequel manga called New Type Warrior Jamil Neat, following one of the main characters of the show named Jamil, and a sequel manga called If I Am With You. World at War, Anno Domini. Though it marks the years in the same way as our own world, the Anno Domini universe in Gundam doesn't really have much in common with us. This parallel world is the home of Gundam 00 and has many unique qualities to it. The first is there are very few colonies. Those that exist are simply for manufacturing, or even prisons, as opposed to a place that you would want to move your whole family to. The vast majority of human beings live on Earth, and the nations of the world are divided into 3 larger groupings that are consistently at war with one another. The other major difference is the technology. This universe is the home to GN particles, which allow mobile suits and other vehicles to harness solar power in a way that allows them to use energy weapons and even fly. This technology is first seen in the hands of a paramilitary group called Celestial Being. Their message to the world is clear: end your wars or we will end them for you. 00 Gundam is the main series associated with this timeline, alongside its follow-up film, which is known as 00 Gundam Awakening of the Trailblazer. And there are also several spin-off manga that tie into the overarching story. There is a prequel light novel called 00P, a prequel manga called 00F, a sequel manga called 00I, and much more on top of that. A Very Rough Life, Advanced Generation. The Advanced Generation began as a video game, and later became an anime. This timeline is the home to Gundam Age, which is the very first Gundam show to ever be a generational story, and also the very first Gundam show to be based off of a video game. The plot follows Flit Asuno and his descendants as they face off against the Vegan Nation. A similarity that this show shares with the After-War and Cosmic Era is that it has many similarities to the Universal Century. All 3 feature an army from space invading the Earth in a 1-year war. However, the technology in this show also has its own unique twist, as the Asuno family uses a sort of material printer to create their weaponry. This gives them a substantial advantage in combat, allowing them to make new weapons and armor on the fly. As mentioned, the main series for this one is Gundam Age, alongside its accompanying video game. Iron-Blooded Battles. Post-disaster. One of the most unique timelines among the Gundam universes is the post-disaster era. Being the home to the beloved Iron-Blooded Orphans series, this is the most brutal timeline outside of the Universal Century. A large part of what makes it so different is tied into its name. Prior to any of the stories that we see, there was a massive conflict called the Calamity War that continues to impact the world hundreds of years later. As such, much of the technology that we see within the show is following a development trend that they had to adopt to survive during that war. Until much later in the show, none of the mobile suits use beam weaponry. Rather, ranged weapons will use bullets or artillery shells, and close-range combat is done with swords, maces, and other assorted giant chunks of metal. Another unique element is the Alea Vignana system. Largely considered a taboo technology, the system allows a pilot to control whatever machine he's piloting with their mind. However, if someone is piloting a Gundam frame, then permanent damage can actually happen to the user's nervous system. This, of course, is assuming that it's even a successful surgery to implant it to begin with, as the surgery can actually cripple or even kill the person having it installed. It's another reflection of the absolute brutality that this universe has, alongside the other dark elements, such as child slavery, mercenary companies, child soldiers, and a generally uncaring world. Aside from Iron-Blooded Orphans, the show has a spin-off manga called Gecko, and a video game spin-off called Uder Hunt, which is also in the process of being animated. Cyberpunk Gundam Ad Stella. As of this video, the Ad Stella universe is the newest Gundam universe to be created. It also took a unique turn by taking some inspiration from other fictional universes. Home to the show The Witch from Mercury, this universe is partially inspired by the cyberpunk genre. Some characters have machine modifications in their body to better survive in space, and these augmentations are a source of strife in the universe. Some people also believe that the series took inspiration from Harry Potter and Revolutionary Girl Utena by having much of the show set in a school, where dueling is a large part of its culture. Despite having background themes of class-based oppression and corporatism, the main story of this timeline largely focuses on a more personal story between its 2 main characters. As of right now, it does not have any spin-off media, but you never know what the future might hold. Home of the Gundam Fight. Future Century. We now move to a timeline where everyone is kung fu fighting, featuring mobile suits that are fast as lightning. The Future Century is the home of G Gundam, the beloved series that switched the formula from a war story to a martial arts one. Though this is another universe where space colonies reign supreme, there are some substantial differences between this universe and others. Each colony in space is actually representative of a different nation here on Earth, and the look of the colony will actually reflect that. Instead of fighting wars on the planet itself, a Gundam fight is held every 4 years. During this time, each nation sends down their mobile suit as a representative, and they all duke it out to see who gets to be in charge. It pulls a lot from shonen series like Fist of the North Star or Dragon Ball, with the lead character of the show performing some techniques that are very similar from the different series that inspired it. Though not many people know about it, G Gundam does have spin-offs. The most notable are Seventh Fight, which is a prequel that stars the beloved character of Master Asia. There's also the sequel known as The Next Generation, plus the main story also has a few manga tie-ins that show other battles that the original show's protagonist fought. The most notable is a giant Gundam kangaroo. The final timeline. Correct century / Regild century. Our final timeline is very unique because every timeline that we've discussed so far ends with this one. The correct century is the home of Turn A Gundam, and hundreds of years later, it becomes the Regild century, which houses Gundam Reconquista in G. These particular stories have an element to them called the Dark History. The story goes that every Gundam universe reached a point where the Turn A Gundam showed up. Given that this mustachioed machine is a doomsday robot capable of destroying all technology on a planet, it effectively resets the timeline. Since Turn A Gundam does not reset its timeline like other Gundam universes do in the Dark History, time continues on. The Regild century takes place many years afterwards, and returns to a wartime setting, but with incredibly advanced technology. One of the mobile suits within this series, the G Lucifer, actually uses the Moonlight Butterfly nanotechnology that the Turn A possesses. This same technology is what reset these universes in the first place, destroying the technology of each timeline. The key stories within this particular timeline are Turn A Gundam and Gundam Reconquista in G. And that brings us to the end of our list. Which one of these is your favorite timeline and why? Please don't hesitate to tell us below in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Gundam content.